Vietnam has about 7 million people with disabilities, 2 million war invalids, to regularly participate in traffic. But transport infrastructure for people with disabilities is lacking or not synchronized. Therefore, the management of traffic problems for people with disabilities is left unsolved. To address this issue, Action to the Community Development Center, ACDC, cooperates with Transport Development and Strategy Institute, TDSI, and Vietnam Foundation of People with Disabilities, VFD, and the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, to hold a conference enhancing accessibility to road traffic for people with disabilities. Participants assess the needs and current status of people with disabilities in road transport, review policy, evaluation of implementation mechanism, and propose solution to the road traffic for people with disabilities in Vietnam.
Greetings from Trang Vietnam on VTC10 NetViet. Transportation is an essential need for people from all walks of life. So what is the situation of transportation for the people with disabilities in Vietnam? In today's program, we have invited Mr. Abram, the Director of Environment and Social Development Office at USAID Vietnam, to join our program today to share more on this topic. So thank you for joining us. The first question we'd like to ask you is, what can you comment on the advantages for the people with disabilities when they participate in the road traffic in Vietnam?
Sure. Well, I think that Hanoi, or actually many cities in Vietnam, have made really important progress in making their public transportation services more accessible to persons with disabilities, for elderly, children, pregnant women, and other people that may need additional assistance. And you're starting to see the results of that here in Hanoi. In the public transportation system, there are additional bus routes that also have specially equipped buses that have, like tactile tiles and other things that enable blind people to sense where they should be and how to get onto the buses, as well as systems that use auditory or speakers that say, here's where we are. Next stop is to help blind people understand when and where to get on and off the bus. And I think that also some training programs for the staff on those buses, to help to provide that additional assistance, and creating a special place on the bus for those persons to sit. So you'll see when you go onto a public bus in Hanoi, in some places, you'll see that these particular chairs are for people that need additional assistance or help.
Apart from those advantages, the people with disabilities are still facing a number of difficulties when they participate in the road traffic in Vietnam. So what do you think about the difficulties?
Though we've made significant progress, and Vietnam has begun that journey as well. They still have much work to be done. As I mentioned before, there are some buses and there are some elements of accessibility in major cities in Vietnam, but of course there can be much more. And you need to make sure that everyone is trained, every bus is accessible, that there's ability to finance these kinds of accessibility improvements, and not just in terms of public transportation, in terms of motor vehicles, but also in terms of sidewalks and making them accessible to wheelchairs and other things. And then just a general awareness of the needs of persons with disabilities, and then taking into account that each individual has their own particular needs. And I think that in the U.S. we've been working on this for many years. We know it's a big challenge, but I think that step by step, with strong political will and the leadership of the government of Vietnam, I think Vietnam will be a success story in that regard.
As far as we know, USAID has been involved in a number of projects that support the people with disabilities to participate in the road traffic in Vietnam. Can you share more with us about that?
So in regards to transportation, well, as I mentioned, USAID has been working with the government of Vietnam for many years, actually, almost over 20 years, in terms of providing support to persons with disabilities. A lot of that at the national level has been in setting up this legal framework. And that's the National Law for Disabilities of 2010, but there's also the National Committee for Disabilities. And that requires that in each province you have a provincial committee for disabilities, and that each province has the mechanism or the ability to implement those laws in those provinces. And accessibility, particularly in the transportation sector, is part of that. And so not only do we work with the Ministry of Transportation, which has been a great partner, up here at the national level in Hanoi, but we also work throughout the country with the the departments of construction, the departments of transportation in the provinces to help make those systems, those buildings more accessible, those transportation systems more accessible for persons with disabilities. So right now we have programs, intensive programs in over 6 provinces, though through the national level we tend to touch more than those 6. And what we found is that almost every place that we work, everyone is completely aware of and understand the need to address sort of some of the shortcomings in terms of accessibility features for persons with disabilities. And then we work with them to if it's in the construction sector, you work with the building owners, or you work with the architects that are designing that building. In the transportation sector, as much as happening in Vietnam, as economic growth advances, much more transportation systems are being put into place, and you just need to design them well to incorporate these accessibility features for persons with disabilities.
Since the law on people with disabilities was issued, more and more people with disabilities have been given social assistance to integrate into the society. Relevant ministries and agencies have actively involved in providing timely access to basic social services for people with disability, including access to transportation. The transportation sector have developed and issued a system of legal documents that are relatively compliant to prioritized policy for people with disabilities and developed human resources to support them. These are the motivations for people with disabilities to integrate into the society.
Tạo điều kiện cho người khuyết tật tự tin, tạo cho người khuyết tật là tiếp cận là công bằng, năng lực có thể thực hiện được thì như vậy nó tốt cho xã hội. Chúng ta không phải là kêu gọi cái sự quan tâm rồi thương hại. Chúng tôi nghĩ rằng cái điều đó mới là điều cấm kỵ ở trong đối với cái hệ thống của người khuyết tật. Người ta muốn vươn lên để thực hiện được như là người bình thường, và được cái điều đó xã hội mình khỏi phải lo về cái việc là hỗ trợ, có thể là phải lo về cái việc mà tổ chức cái vấn đề về an sinh xã hội. Cái ý nghĩa nó lớn lắm, và cái ý nghĩa nhân văn nó lại càng lớn hơn. Cái nhân văn thì như tôi nói không phải là từ thiện, mà là cái việc mình làm cho người ta tự tin, người ta hòa nhập với xã hội, người ta sống, nghĩa là mọi người đều sống có trách nhiệm với nhau, và người khuyết tật cứ vững vàng mà tiến bước đi lên.
However, at present, people with disabilities face many difficulties in traveling and using public transportation. Previously, installation of equipment to assist people with disabilities at transportation infrastructure, including roads, sidewalks, bus stations, bus shelters, etc., were not well done. As a result, professionals and representatives from the Association of People with Disabilities says that it is important to give people with disabilities a chance to take a driver's license in order to be able to travel easily. It is also the legitimate need of people with disabilities now.
Chúng ta cần phải có ưu tiên, có những ưu tiên, có những giải pháp ưu tiên để cho người khuyết tật được là thi lấy bằng lái xe 3 bánh này, lái ô tô này. Đấy, bởi vì vấn đề này là các nước tiên tiến trên thế giới và một số nước trong khu vực đó, ta nói như Thái Lan, Singapore gần đây đó, thì những cái vấn đề người ta cũng đã làm rất tốt rồi. Thì Việt Nam mình cũng nên có những cái giải pháp để chúng ta thực hiện ngay những vấn đề này.
In addition, in order to improve access to road traffic for people with disabilities, experts have made some recommendations, such as reviewing, implementing, and adjusting legal documents, especially the transport technical regulation, taking measures to ensure effective implementations, raising awareness of the community on sharing and implementing social responsibility, helping people with disabilities in their life in general and in access road traffic in particular.
It is suggested that a number of people with disabilities should be given a chance to participate in the contest to get the driver license, for example, the motorcycle. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think that, as I mentioned, maybe a little earlier, the default for this is that it's inclusion, not exclusion. Melissa says, according to their statistics, that there's over 7 million people with disabilities in Vietnam. And many of those people can ride a motorcycle or ride a motorbike without any issues whatsoever. They might require additional assistive device or additional system, but they're more than capable of performing on the roads and following the laws. So I think that when one looks at who should be included or excluded from a particular part of society, I think they need to be extraordinarily flexible, because many people have the capabilities to do that. Individuals, those citizens, want to become productive economic sort of producers in this system, and will provide economic benefits to move things along. So in a way, when you're making your investment decisions, and I think the government of Vietnam recognizes this, that by excluding that segment of the population, you're actually losing a lot of economic potential in the process. And so by making those investments for accessibility, you're really advancing your economy more than you are prioritizing between different kinds of infrastructure investment.
It is said a large number of people with disabilities are not aware of the road traffic regulations. So what do you think about this? And in your opinion, what actions should we take in order to solve this problem?
Sure. Well, training and communication is always the key to getting the message out and getting people informed as to what the existing rules and regulations are on the road. I mean, I guess some people would argue that many people in Vietnam are not aware of the roads and the rules and regulations on the road here. But it's not just about persons with disabilities, but it's about the entire community and society as a whole needing to understand what persons with disabilities may require in order to be fully included in society, as well as those persons with disabilities. And that kind of information can be shared through the government. It can be shared through radio or television, radio for blind people, television for deaf others. There's lots of different ways in which those messages can be shared, and then what services are available to those disabled persons, and not just to the disabled persons, but their families, so that they're aware, and then they can also take efforts to take full advantage of those systems.
From the experience in the US, can you give some kind of the solutions that are suitable to the context of Vietnam to support the people with disabilities to participate in the road traffic here?
Sure. So I think what we found in the United States, and I think what other countries have found as they embark on creating a robust system to provide services to their persons with disabilities and enable sort of a society that is more accessible to all their citizens, is that you have to include everyone. All stakeholders are very, very important for this. You have the law, and you have the sort of the framework in which these things can occur, but enforcement is uneven, and it also costs quite a bit of money. It requires investment. So if you want additional or new buses that have specialized devices, or tactile tiles, or information in braille, or auditory systems, you need to make those investments. And one of the places that we found in the United States that's been very helpful is by partnering with the private sector to make those investments happen. It doesn't have to happen by the state itself, but the companies that provide those services also have a stake in that as well. And so by building awareness and understanding of the existing rules and laws, and then getting those laws implemented, we found that one of the best ways to finance that is by working with the private sector.
Once again, thank you for joining us, and we hope in the future USAID will implement more projects to support the people with disabilities in Vietnam. And that's all we have for this episode of Sang Vietnam today. For comment and feedback, don't hesitate to write to us at sangvietnam@netvietttv.net. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.